LAS 15002150, Psychology 4. Arousal. Arousal is when you get psyched up or become excited due to a stimulus. Arousal can affect you in physical activity by affecting your performance, concentration and attention span. There are 3 types of attention span you can have. These are narrow attention span, broad attention span, and optimal attention span. When you have high arousal levels, you have a narrow attention span, so you cannot concentrate on the environment around you, and you can only concentrate on a narrow range of things. For example, in football, you have just been slid out by an opponent, so you experience high levels of arousal. Therefore, you concentrate on getting revenge on your opposing player, and do not pay attention to what is happening in the game, causing you to make silly mistakes or not seeing runs of players that you could potentially stop and intercept. When you have a low arousal level, this is when you have a broad attention span, so you'll be a lot more relaxed, and in a football match this will be a lot more effective, as you'll be able to concentrate on more of the game and play more effectively and efficiently, as you will have the vision to see everything around you because of the broad attention span and a much higher awareness. When you reach your optimum level of arousal, this is when you have an optimal attention span. This is not as wide as the broad attention span, but is wider than the narrow. This will be the level of arousal where it is at its highest before your attention span begins to lower and concentration begins to drop. During a football match, this will be the point where you are highly aroused, but still are concentrating on the game and not making silly mistakes. For example, a central midfielder dribbling up the pitch into the opposition's box. There is a 2 versus 1 and the defender runs towards the midfielder to tackle him. He would then pass the ball off to his teammate, so they are on a 1 versus 1 with the keeper and have a high likeliness to score. However, if the central midfielder was over-aroused, they would have tried to take on the defender, which would have not been the safest decision to make, as they are less likely to score because the player may get tackled. Hole's dry theory. This theory states as your arousal increases, the quality of your performance also increases. This is true for events like weightlifting, because as the weightlifter is about to lift a really heavy weight, they need extreme amounts of energy and arousal to lift the load. Therefore, they psych themselves up to lift the weight. The more aroused and psyched up the person is, the more stress their body is going to be under, and the heavier the weight they are able to lift. Therefore, the theory works and is successful in this case. However, this theory doesn't always work, and therefore the theory is described as not reliable and incorrect. For example, a darts player needs to be highly concentrated to hit the area they are aiming for on the board. Therefore, they need low levels of arousal, and if they become over-aroused, they will lose concentration and therefore decrease in level of performance. The inverted U theory. The inverted U theory states that there is an optimum arousal level, and if you go past this, you become over-aroused, and your performance begins to drop in quality, and that you could also be The theory also states that you could be under-aroused. The theory states that you perform your best once you have reached your optimum arousal level. This is a more reliable and correct theory to explain arousal within sport and physical activity. For example, in basketball, you are playing a game of killer, and you miss your first shot. Therefore, you become aroused, because you feel excited because you will get knocked out if you miss again, and the player behind scores their shot. Therefore, your arousal increases and you perform better and score your next shot. Then the person in front misses their shot, and you reach your optimum arousal level because you can knock them out. You then score the shot because you are performing at your highest standard. Moments later, you have a free shot. You then miss this shot, and the guy behind you gets ready to shoot, so you become worried and become over-aroused. Therefore, the quality of your performance deteriorates, because you are getting nervous and feel under pressure. And you keep missing your shots because you feel overpressured and over-aroused. Therefore, you get knocked out by the person behind you, explaining how arousal works in the inverted U theory. The catastrophe theory. There is 4 points within the catastrophe theory. Point A is where cognitive and somatic anxiety are high. This causes a so-called catastrophe. At point B, extreme arousal can either continue, leading to a further decline, or it can reduce, which then leads to a recovery. At point C, if there is still an extreme arousal at point B, arousal and anxiety are still high, causing the decline. And finally, at point D, the performer regains control of anxiety and the arousal levels begin to return to optimum level. A non-elite athlete is more likely to hit point C. However, elite athletes would go back to their dominant behavior when they get over-aroused because of their training and experience. Therefore, from point B will go up to point D and will not go lower. An example of the catastrophe theory in sport is in football. There is a striker and he is playing a poor game and nothing seems to be going right for him. He then reaches point A. This is where the catastrophe occurs. He would then go down to point B because there is extreme arousal and it is continuum. However, if the striker was an elite athlete, they would go back to their dominant behavior, hiring him up to point D, as the performer will regain his control of anxiety and the arousal levels begin to return to optimum level, where the person will be performing at their highest level. From point B, if the striker was a non-elite athlete, the extreme arousal may continue, therefore causing them to drop again, making them go to point C, where the arousal and anxiety are still high, causing the decline. Therefore, the performance of the striker will continue to deteriorate, and the player will feel like they're not doing nothing right, and eventually get subbed off as they are having a poor game.